is about human capacity development targeted at ensuring that the new generation or the next generation of energy engineers that we produce have the right balance between fossil fuels and renewable energy. Yeah? So I get that question a lot from young people. What should they do next? Because they keep hearing this story. There's tension about whether they should continue studying geology and petroleum engineering or whether they should reskill and go to some other industry. That's number one. So it's around human capacity development. The other one is also something I hear from the service companies, especially the Nigerian service companies under PETA. They are worried about two critical things. One is about the fact that as investment dries up in the upstream oil and gas company, it has a direct impact on their ability to survive. Barely survive, that's even where they are right now, let alone sustain growth. The next one is around all the noise about the transition. What is the advice of NCDMB, who predominantly have been in the driving seat of local content development in the oil and gas industry? What's the advice of NCDMB to these service companies who also are under the same kind of tension as the students I talked about and the young people I talked about what to do next?
Thank you, Chike. If you realize, when I was called up to sit down, I had to count the chairs. You were supposed to be here, but I knew you were the moderator and I wanted you to be in the middle. So that there is a balance, both right and left. And I think I achieved that. Secondly, you started by saying the question will be attacked. I remember in secondary school I played defense. So while you are attacking, I'm going to defend. So that you know that's where I stand with regards to this issue that we are discussing. I know you asked those three questions, but I think it's important that I also put my message across before I delve into them. While I do that, some of the questions might be answered as we speak. Let me thank the Society of Petroleum Engineers for this invitation and also the opportunity to speak and be on the panel with most of my colleagues here. Really appreciate that. And again, the topic before us is sustainable energy transition strategy in Africa, the role of the legislative framework and investment programs. I think it's very germane. If I address some of the points that my brother Bala raised in his presentation, very succinct, just like what he said, captured it in very few slides. If I delve into the legislative debate, if we continue to have these discussions on legislative framework without driving the narrative, we will not go anywhere as a country, Nigeria. And I think within this hall, I see the people that can drive that legislative framework. If we sit back and allow the energy transition advocates to capture the narratives, they will be the one to draft the framework for our legislators in the National Assembly to start discussions. And I'm sure those who started the discussion on PIB 15 years ago will bear me witness. Because we were talking, they then drove the narrative. Hence, for 15 years, we couldn't pass an act up until last year. So I think it is important that, like Bala has said with his presentation, and especially the NNPC Limited, to drive that framework establishment as quickly as possible, in conjunction with the people seated in this room. My short opening remarks, I would like to provide the following brief perspectives on energy transition. And this perhaps to the younger ones who are afraid. Energy transition is not a new phenomenon. It has been there even before I was born, and even before some of us here. And for generations past, as we move from biomass to coal to oil and gas and to renewable energy as the latest form of energy of interest currently. So it's not a new phenomenon. It's been with us for a very long time. For that question about the service providers, it is important for them to know that the Stone Age did not disappear because of lack of stones. Stones still existed, but because people refused to adapt to changes, that was how the Stone Age withered away. So I believe that the service providers will begin to think that this is perhaps real. But in the same context, when you look at the various sustainable development goals, E is environment, S is social, and I'm sure they arranged it that way because of ease of reading it. If not for me, it would have been SEG, not ESG. Because first, while the environment is very important, no doubt about it, the existence of human being within the environment itself is more important. Because if we lay emphasis on the environment and we all disappear, the environment will remain there. And we that are within the environment will disappear before the environment. So I think we need to understand this. And I think it was one president of America who, when he was asked to sign the Kyoto Protocol, I think it was George Bush, he refused to sign the Kyoto Protocol. He said, people have to survive before the environment itself. But if we lay emphasis on the other hand, how many people do we want on planet Earth at the end of the day? So he refused to sign it for a very long time before they got into this so-called COP26 that happened. That's why I'm saying I'm playing defense. Point number 2, the world has never really transited completely out of one form of energy into the other, but has always moved from one dominant form of energy to another, while the rest remains in the mix. And that is a fact. And if you go back in history on the reason why the transition usually takes a very long time from one form of energy to the other, some of it lasted for almost 100 years, that transition. If you look at when we moved from biomass to coal, donkey years, centuries ago, was because of the Industrial Revolution that came in Britain, where they invented the locomotive and also cars, where they were using steam cars, steam engines to run cars for a very long time. And then of course people did research and discovered that coal was even more efficient in terms of producing the steam to run those locomotives. So they moved from that to the next form of fuel. So I am not surprised that the jet age today is driving us to the 4th industrial revolution, where we are beginning to talk about the energy transition in itself. The third point I wanted to make, the dominant form of energy in any society is largely a reflection of its technological development as well as source of energy as a natural endowment. I think this is very important. For example, a country blessed with hydrocarbon resources requires the technological know-how to develop and utilize the resources, otherwise it lies fallow. Today, if you go to the North Sea, the hydrocarbon that you have in the North Sea is depleted. It probably does not exist anymore. And if you go to other countries where they had hydrocarbon, today they are not finding anything. So what are they doing? Using their technological know-how to change that narrative on which direction they want to go. But what are we doing in Africa? We're very much in a haste to abandon our God-given resources. That's why I like Bala's presentation. The discussion is not about how we want to catch up with them. It is more about how we want to develop our natural resources for our existence. And it has become an existential imperative for us If we don't learn, as of today, there's no way we are going to learn anymore as we continue this journey. The fourth point, the latest drive towards energy transition is underpinned by the need for us to practice local content. And I think that addresses some of the questions you're asking. Many of the European and Western countries would rather utilize their technological advancements to develop alternative forms of energy rather than rely on other nations for their energy needs. And I've said that because those forms of energy that they had in the past that had endeared their development to this level have all depleted. And it is Africa today where everybody or every country in Africa, almost every country in Africa, have discovered that natural resources. I remember 15 years ago, if you put up the oil and gas map here, you will see perhaps 4 countries where hydrocarbon is discovered. But today, put it up, almost all the countries in Africa you have hydrocarbon. And the discussion is now changing for us to abandon that natural resources. Regarding the aspect of the topic on legislative framework for sustainable energy transition in Africa, it is important for African countries, particularly Nigeria, to put in place a set of laws that enhance the development and utilization of the various forms of energy within their border. They must see energy transition as a means to practice effective local content to meet their energy needs. The need to include green energy in the mix of source of energy in Africa is a good one, but commitment must be measured and paced at the right level across countries, regions, and continents. No form of energy should be demonized against other, as nature has put it in place various sources of energy unique to every locality. Today, if you talk about even the degradation of some of the byproducts of the so-called fossil fuel, the question is, eventually it will degrade, but it is the time allotted to every byproduct that extends that process of degradation. And it doesn't happen overnight. And that is what we are facing today. Investment programs to connect African countries, their infrastructure, finance, mega processing plants, research and development, technology innovation, and human capacity development are also very important to ensure Africa meets the energy needs of the people. I am delighted at the various initiatives put in place across the various institutions in Africa, such as Apple, Afri-Exim Bank, African Development Bank, and others. At NCDMB, we, focusing on us, we have also been deliberate in the various programs we put in place to develop local capabilities and capacities. Currently, we are then thinking, we have a 10-year strategic roadmap, which we formulated before the rush for energy transition became topical. That 10-year strategic roadmap, we have decided to say, okay, let us revisit it and align it very much with the government commitment with regards to energy transition. What else can we do? And I think that provides opportunity to address the issues by the younger ones to say there's need to look at it. How do we bring it home? What programs do we design to give them confidence that whatever transition there is, there's a role for the future generation to fit into that transition program. So, supply chain development, commercial ventures partnership in 26 states, Abuja, and development of industrial park, enhancement of our human capacity development program with about 13 million training man-hours so far delivered and $500 million intervention funds covering manufacturing, asset acquisition, women in oil and gas, working capital, research and development. Lastly, let me use this opportunity to highlight that while I agree that there is need to improve on the negative impact of energy use on the environment, it is important to avoid setting deadlines that threatens global energy security. And I think that has been highlighted very much by Bala and other speakers. Let me rest my case for that.
Thank you very much. I cannot verify whether you were a good defender, but that is an absolutely brilliant defense. So the young ones, the service companies, you've actually heard what he has said. It's not that the energy transition is not there. Even NCDMB is trying to adapt its 10-year look ahead to see how they can bring in that energy transition aspect into their overall outlook. And he talked about the fact that the Stone Age did not end because we ran out of stones. And there is all the energy types that we've seen in the past, none has actually been taken out totally from the energy mix. So the answer that Simbi has given is that while you keep aware of what is happening in the global energy space, please understand that there may be need to retool and reskill, but understand also that within Nigeria itself, our energy industry will always have a mix that includes fossil fuels, and that with the work that is being done by various agencies, I'll come back to Bala on a little bit of that, and to Austin as well, on the need to have an Africa investment arm, whether it's Afro Exim Bank or what we keep hearing about an energy bank, to make sure that if international funding dries up, Africa can still chart its course about its own design of energy transition without having to rely too much on foreign investments.